Hi there, motorhome owners. Today in your 2017 Fleetwood Bounder, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Roadmaster's Rear Anti-Sway Bar. And this is what our sway bar looks like when it's installed. It's designed to work in conjunction with your factory sway bar, which is located just on the other side of the axle. We can see that hanging down there at the bottom. Except this one here is going to be an even larger and more robust sway bar that's going to further prevent sway. And you can see here how it does this. We're attached to the frame here at the top on each side on our hangers that come down, and then we're attached to our axle here. So whenever the body wants to roll to the left or to the right, it's going to have to either push down on this arm and lift up on that one, or vice versa. And this bar wants to stay in its normal position. And as we twist the arms up and down, it's going to pull itself back to this position, helping to keep our vehicle stay in its upright position. Before we install our suspension enhancements, we're going to go ahead and hit our test course, and we're going to get a baseline of how our motorhome feels so we can verify the improvements that we've made. So we're going to head into our test course now. First, we're going to go into the uneven bump section, and this is going to simulate a pothole. This is going to get us rocking back and forth, and it's rocking pretty good now. Once we get our suspension enhancements on there, I'm sure it's definitely going to minimize it, stiffening our suspension up. Next is the even bump section here, where this is our front and back, our porpoising. And we do got a little bit of bounce up and down, especially when we come over the back side of the bump there. It should smooth it out quite a bit once we get our suspension enhancements on there. And then lastly, we're going to go into our slalom section. And this is going to simulate an evasive maneuver. And this is usually where I really notice the biggest benefits after we've done the installs. And let's go ahead and get her rocking back and forth here. Oh yeah, you can definitely feel right away that it's got quite a bit of sway going on. Yep, I definitely don't feel too comfortable with it, so we're going to go ahead and get it back into the shop, get these parts on. So now that we've got all of our suspension enhancements installed, we're going to hit the test course once again. We're going to go into our uneven bump section first, and as we hit the bumps, we can tell an immediate difference. It's significantly smoother, the impact, and once we come down off the bump, we don't have nearly as many oscillations up and down. When we go into the even bump section, we're here just further noticing that the porpoising is less than it was before. And now as we come into the slalom section, I'm going to start going back and forth, and oh man, right away you can definitely tell a big difference. The first time when I turned it to the right, I almost had to back off immediately because I was afraid this thing was getting ready to tip on me. Now I've got way more confidence in it, and it just feels great. Back and forth, back and forth. The items inside aren't making as much noise as they were before, and the confidence that I have behind the wheel really to me is the biggest thing. This is also going to reduce the amount of work that you have to put into keeping your vehicle going straight because it's going to be upright. You're not going to be fighting that weight back and forth. So it's going to reduce the fatigue that you have on long road trips. So when you get to your destination, you can have more energy and spend more time with your family and enjoy doing the things that you like to do. The bar is a solid steel construction with a black powder coat finish to protect it against rust and corrosion. It comes with all the hardware and brackets that you see here, so you have everything you'll need to get it installed. And the bushings that are found at all the points here are going to be a polyurethane bushing that's resistant against road grimes, oils, dirt, debris, and UV rays, so you don't have to worry about them breaking down over time like your factory bushings will. Now that we've covered some of the features of it, why don't you follow along with me and we'll show you how to get it installed. You do want to keep in mind on this install you are going to need a very large torque wrench, as some of the hardware here needs to be torqued down higher than what your typical torque wrenches will do. We'll begin our installation by using our leveling jacks to lift up on our vehicle. That's going to give us the proper clearance that we need to access the bolts here on the inside, because otherwise our leaf spring stack's going to be in the way. But by letting the axle hang down, it doesn't need to come completely off the ground like this. We've just got it all the way up just to make things a little bit easier for you guys to see. We're only going to be removing the two lower bolts. We're going to use a 21mm socket to remove those. The nut on the other side, it normally is going to fall to the ground. That's no big deal. You can go ahead and leave it there. And you can see our nuts have a tab on them. That's why you don't need a wrench on the other side. We can now take our hanger bracket. This piece here is going to be on the outside of the frame. It's going to go up just like this. And the bolts we removed, we're just going to reinsert those to attach this bracket. And then on the other side, we're just going to reattach the nuts. It's usually easiest if you just take the nut and put it on there and then spin the bolt due to that little ear that hangs off on the nut. And we just need to get it started because that ear will hit the frame when we go to tighten it down, so we can just go back out there with our gun once we get them started. Once we've got both sides installed, we'll want to lower our RV back down until our axle's on the ground, because the next step is going to require the axle to be on the ground in order for us to safely take off the components we need to take off. We're now underneath, and our U-bolts that we have here, we'll need to remove the nuts onto our U-bolts because we're going to be putting a plate on underneath the existing plate here and then reattaching it. The U-bolts are held on by a 1 1/8 inch socket. You do want to keep in mind that you need a pretty big torque wrench to be able to torque these back down once you take them loose. They are going to be extremely tight. You may need to get out your biggest breaker bar to get these guys off. I went ahead and soaked these in penetrant the night before to help them come off a little bit easier. I also like to take one of the nuts after I've got it off and just put it on there a couple of threads to keep this plate here from falling off, because this is a pretty heavy plate. So I'll leave one on this corner and one on the opposite one to keep it from coming off. So now that we're right here at the end, we're going to go ahead and take off the last couple we had on here just to ensure that it wouldn't move. And then we're going to take our new bracket here and we're going to slide it on underneath our existing bracket. And we want to make sure that these holes here are facing towards the rear and also towards the center, just like this. We can then reinstall our nuts. Once you've got all those started, just double check your U-bolts at the top to make sure they're still in their seats and they hadn't moved, because sometimes you push them up and they might fall off and be sitting on top of the leaf spring here instead of on top of their seat. So just double check those, and then you can go ahead and tighten them back down. I just kind of go back and forth to tighten them down evenly. Then we can go back and torque them to the manufacturer's specifications. You'll repeat those same procedures on the other side. Now that we've got our brackets in place, we're going to prep the sway bar so we can attach it to them. We have our split bushings here, as well as the shackles that go on them. You'll get some lubricant in your kit here. Some people do indicate that they get irritation on their skin from it. I haven't found any issues with it, so I'm just going to wipe it off with a rag when I'm done. But if you have sensitive skin, you may want to consider wearing some latex gloves. We're going to smear this all around the inside of our bushing, get it fully coated in there. And once we've got the inside fully coated up, the little bit of excess that's left on my finger, I like to smear just on the outside here. It's not necessary, but it can help minimize any squeaks and rattles and noises that can occur from sway bars over time. So now the split portion, we're just going to open it up, slide it around our bushing, and then we can put our clamp on. I'm going to do that on the other side with our other bushing here as well. So now we can turn to our brackets, and we're going to be using the set of holes that's closest to the rear. We got our rearest hole here, and that's going to connect between these. You can see they're in a straight line. These ones are offset. This is the front set of holes. We're going to be using the rear set. So just hold your guy up there, slide that through, place your washer on the other side, and follow it up with a locking nut. And I'm going to do the same thing here on the back side. Slide that guy through, slide our washer on, and then place a nut on. Now that we have those started, we're going to get our hangers in place. Those are going to go on the brackets that we put on first. The bushing side is going to slide up into your hanger there, and then we're going to use the largest bolts that come in our kit to slide it from the outside toward the inside, and then we're going to start our nut on it. We can then go over to the other side and we'll get our hardware started over there. We can now tip our sway bar up. It should pivot. We need to poke the other side to get everything to line up. That's going to fall into place, and then again from the outside in, we're going to use those same large bolts and start a nut on it. And then we'll do the same on the other side as well. We can now go back and tighten and torque all of our hardware. For our smaller bolts here, we're going to be using a 16mm socket and 18mm wrench to tighten it down. And for our large bolts through our hangers, we're going to tighten those down with a 15/16 socket and wrench. And once the ears start to touch your rubbers there, that's really about as tight as we want to get these. We're going to do the same thing with the top here and then over on the other side as well. Then we can go back and torque our hardware. We don't want to torque our bushings here on the outside. Once that gets tight, like we talked about, and it touches, that's as far as we want to go, because this needs to be able to pivot inside of there. So we're just going to torque the ones here on our clamps. And that completes our installation of Roadmaster's Rear Anti-Sway Bar on our 2017 Fleetwood Bounder.